My father told a doctor to let me die because he refused to pay the hospital bill while I was in a coma. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 28 years old and I'm a nurse. The irony of saving lives for a living and almost losing my own to a signature, it's not lost on me. Every day I walked those hospital corridors, I saw families making impossible decisions. I saw mothers holding their children's hands through the worst moments of their lives. I saw fathers bargaining with God for just one more day. But I never imagined I would become the patient. I never imagined I would be the one lying in that bed with tubes running into my arms and machines breathing for me. And I certainly never imagined that the person who was supposed to protect me, the person who was supposed to fight for me, would be the one to give up on me first. Let her go. We will not authorize further treatment. My father said to the attending physician as I lay motionless in a sterile room, machines breathing for me. Those words would haunt me for the rest of my life. He said it with the same casual indifference you'd use to cancel a magazine subscription. No waver in his voice, no tears in his eyes, no hesitation. He signed the Do Not Resuscitate form at 9:47 p.m. on a chilly Tuesday evening. Not because the doctors had informed him there was no hope, not because my condition was terminal. He signed it because a woman in the billing office told him what the intensive care would cost. That was it. A dollar amount. A number on a piece of paper. And that number was worth more to him than my entire existence. When I finally regained consciousness 3 weeks later, battered and weak, unable to even sit up, I discovered that the DNR was just the tip of the iceberg. There was a far deeper betrayal I was about to uncover. A betrayal that had been years in the making. A betrayal that my grandmother had seen coming long before I ever did. What I did in the first 24 hours after learning the truth didn't just change my life. It dismantled his entirely. Everything he had built, everything he had worked for, everything he had stolen from me, it all came crashing down in a single day. He thought he knew his daughter. He was about to find out how wrong he was. He had spent my entire life underestimating me. He had spent my entire life treating me like a burden, like a debt to be managed. But he forgot one crucial thing about me. He forgot that I had spent years learning to survive. He forgot that I had spent years watching him, learning his patterns, understanding his weaknesses, and when the moment came, I was ready. Before we get to the vengeance, I have to take you back. Way back, 7 months before my accident, to the day my grandmother passed away. That was the day the first domino fell. That was the day the seeds of his destruction were planted, even though none of us knew it yet. I was born with a congenital heart defect. The doctors called it a ventricular septal defect. It was a hole in the wall that separated the two lower chambers of my heart. When I was 4 years old, they cracked open my chest to repair it. The surgery took about 10 hours. The medical debt it generated took my mother nearly 2 decades to stop worrying about. My father, however, never forgot it. He never let me forget it either. That debt became a weapon he used against me for as long as I could remember. Every request, every need, every simple childhood desire was met with the same reminder. You cost this family everything. You are the reason we don't have money. You are the reason we can't afford nice things. I remember being 8 years old and asking for new sneakers because the soles were peeling and water would soak my socks on rainy days. He was sitting at our dining room table, staring at a pile of bills and receipts. The fluorescent light above him cast harsh shadows across his face. He looked tired, but he always looked tired. He made sure we all knew how tired he was. "Do you have any idea what you've already cost this family?" he asked. He didn't look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on those papers. $187,000. That is what your heart cost us. That is what you cost us. Do you understand what that number means? Do you understand how many years of work it takes to pay that off? I didn't understand the number. I was 8. But I understood the shame. I understood the weight of that debt pressing down on my tiny shoulders. I understood that I was the problem. I never got the sneakers. I learned to walk carefully to avoid the water. I learned to make do with what I had. By the time I was 12, I learned not to ask for anything. Not for clothes, not for school supplies, not for the things other kids took for granted. I had become an expert at being invisible. I learned to disappear into the background, to make myself small, to take up as little space as possible. Because I believed that was what I owed them. I believed I had to earn my place in that family. At 15, I took up babysitting for the neighbors just so I could buy my own school supplies. I would watch their children for 6 or 7 hours at a time, coming home exhausted, and then I would sit at the kitchen table doing my homework while my father watched television in the living room. He never asked me where the money came from. He never thanked me. He never even acknowledged what I was doing. But that was fine. I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it because I had learned that I couldn't count on anyone else. At 18, I was applying for student loans alone while my older sister Claire packed for the state university my parents were paying for in full. There was no discussion about it. It was just the way things were. Claire was the golden child. Claire could do no wrong. Claire got everything she wanted, and I got the leftovers. Claire got a used car for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass. Claire got her tuition covered. I got a mountain of debt. Claire got birthday dinners at fancy restaurants. I got a boxed cake mix and a birthday card signed only by my mom. And the worst part was that I didn't even resent Claire for it. She was just playing the game. She was just taking what was given to her. I accepted it all. I truly, deeply believed I deserved it. My father had told me so many times that I was a financial burden that it felt like an absolute truth, a fact as immutable as the scar on my chest. I internalized that debt. I carried it with me like I carried my nursing badge, as if it was part of my identity. I believed I was less than. I believed I was a mistake that had to be corrected. The only person who never once mentioned that debt was my grandmother, Eleanor. She was the one person who looked at me and didn't see a number. She saw me. The real me. The person I could have been if I hadn't been crushed under the weight of my father's resentment. Eleanor lived in a modest, 2-bedroom brick house on Maple Street. It had a wraparound porch and a garden she tended to with her bare hands, no matter the season. She'd lived there for 40 years, raised my mother there, and buried my grandfather from that very living room. That house was her sanctuary. It was her legacy. And she always made sure I knew I was welcome there. I started visiting her every Saturday when I was 23, fresh out of nursing school and burdened with student loans. I'd drive 40 minutes to see her, bring her groceries, check her blood pressure, and sit on that creaking porch swing to listen to her talk for hours. Those Saturdays were my salvation. They were the only time I felt truly safe. She never made me feel like I owed her anything. She never asked about the money. She never brought up the medical bills. She just wanted to know how I was doing. She wanted to know if I was eating properly. She wanted to know if I was happy. She saw the weight I was carrying, and she never added to it. Once, near the end, she said something that I didn't fully comprehend at the time. I've made sure you'll be taken care of, sweetheart. When the time is right, a man named Mr. Harrington will reach out to you." I just squeezed her fragile hand and assumed she was confused. She was 86, after all. I put it down to her medication. I didn't realize she was planning for my future. I didn't realize she was setting up a safety net because she knew exactly what kind of man my father was. My father hated these visits. "You're wasting gas," he'd complain. "She doesn't even remember who you are anymore." That was a lie. Eleanor was sharp as a tack until her very last breath. She remembered everything, especially things my father wished she would forget. She remembered the way he treated me. She remembered the way he manipulated me. She remembered the way he used money as a weapon against his own daughter. She died in her sleep on a quiet Thursday in spring. My father organized the funeral, brief, efficient, and inexpensive. He refused to let me speak. "We're not making a show out of this," he told me at the door of the funeral home. I stood at the back and said my goodbyes in private. I whispered to her that I would make her proud. I whispered that I would find a way to be okay. I had no idea how important those words would become. Eleanor had said a man named Harrington would find me. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea what he would mean to me. I wouldn't learn his name until I was fighting for my life, and my father was signing it away. 3 months later, I was driving home from a night shift at the hospital. It was 4:23 in the morning. The roads were slick with a light drizzle. I remember the time exactly because I was calculating how much sleep I could grab before my next shift. 7 hours if I skipped breakfast, 6 if I showered. It was a calculation I never had to make again. A pickup truck blew through a red light at 50 miles an hour and slammed directly into my driver's side door. The impact was so violent the frame of my car crumpled like paper. Metal twisted and groaned. Glass shattered across the pavement. The world turned upside down in an instant. I don't remember the sound. I don't remember the pain. They told me later I was conscious for about 90 seconds, just long enough to whisper my name to a paramedic. Then, everything went dark. I had traumatic brain swelling, 4 fractured ribs, and extensive internal bleeding. The trauma team at St. Jude's, my own hospital, the one I worked at, rushed me into surgery immediately. But the hemorrhaging wouldn't stop. I needed a second surgery, a specialist, more time in the OR, and someone to authorize it. I was unmarried. I had no children. The only emergency contact on my file was my father, Gerald. He had insisted on being listed there since I was 18. I thought it was a kindness. I thought he wanted to be there for me. I was wrong. It was control. It was always control with him. They called him at 10:15 p.m. He arrived at 10:32. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't ask if I was in pain. He walked straight to the financial office and asked one blunt question: "What is this going to cost me?" That was his first instinct. Not worry, not fear, not concern for his daughter's life. Money. I found this out from a nurse named Beverly. Everyone called her Bev. She had been a nurse for 30 years, and she had a memory like a steel trap. She had seen everything in those 3 decades. She had seen families make impossible choices. She had seen miracles and tragedies. But she had never seen what my father did that night. She was working the station when my father emerged from the billing office and cornered Dr. Myers, the surgeon who was managing my case. My father asked for an estimate on the second operation. The surgeon gave him a range, $170,000 to $220,000, depending on complications. Insurance would handle a chunk, but significant out-of-pocket costs would remain. My father didn't flinch. I'm her father, he told Dr. Myers. I'm the legal next of kin. If there's no proxy on file, the decision falls to me. He said it like he was reading from a script. He said it like he had been waiting for this moment. Then he said it, I'm authorizing a Do Not Resuscitate order. We are not paying for more surgery. She's been a financial drain on this family her whole life. Those words, those exact words. He had been holding on to them for years. He had been waiting for an opportunity to say them out loud. He signed the form at 11:18 p.m. His hand was completely steady. He placed the pen down, asked if he needed to sign anything else, and walked to the elevator. He did not come to see me. He didn't look through the glass. He didn't say a word to me. He just left. Bev was stunned. She gripped the edge of her station so hard her knuckles went white. She wanted to scream. Instead, she did something far more effective. She sat down and pulled up my employee file. Every nurse at St. Jude's fills out an emergency packet. Most people skip the healthcare proxy section. I didn't. 3 years before that night, I had named my healthcare proxy as my best friend from nursing school, Jessica Chen. She lived 40 minutes away in Cherry Hill. Bev found her number in less than a minute. She called Jessica at 11:16 p.m. Jessica answered on the first ring. Bev told her everything, the accident, the coma, the father who had just signed a DNR to save money. She told her that I was going to die if someone didn't act. She told her that my father had already left. Jessica didn't hesitate. She said, I'm on my way. She drove through the rain for 90 minutes and walked into the hospital at 12:43 a.m. with her ID and a copy of the proxy agreement she'd kept in her safe. She revoked the DNR. She authorized the surgery. Dr. Myers was back within the hour. My father, meanwhile, was fast asleep at home. He had no idea the order had been countermanded. He truly believed the machines would be shut off, and he'd get a call in the morning informing him I was gone. He slept peacefully that night. He dreamed of the money he would save. But Bev didn't call him. Neither did Jessica. Neither did anyone. Instead, Bev wrote up an internal incident report. She documented everything, the exact words he used, the timestamps, the forged proxy claim. She filed it and locked her computer. She knew that document would be important someday. She just didn't know how important. Gerald Thomas went to bed that night thinking he would have a dead daughter by dawn. He slept soundly. The next day, he made his second mistake, the one that would ultimately destroy him. My father expected a call, a time of death, a notification. He had already rehearsed his performance, the grief, the watery eyes, the sigh of the grieving father. He had already planned what he would tell his friends at church. He had already imagined the sympathy he would receive. But the call never came, and instead of calling the hospital himself to check on me, Gerald spent that Wednesday morning doing something else entirely. He went to steal my house. Here's what I didn't know. My grandmother Eleanor had transferred her house in Norristown into my name before she passed away. The deed was filed legally and officially through her personal attorney. My father didn't know it existed. He had no idea that Eleanor had outmaneuvered him. What he did know was that Eleanor was gone, and the house was sitting empty. He knew someone had to claim it, and he decided that someone should be him. He had fabricated a power of attorney document with a fake signature. He was an expert at forging my handwriting, a skill he had perfected over years of signing forms on my behalf. He brought this forged POA to a notary friend named Carl, who owed him a favor and asked no questions. Carl stamped it, and Gerald filed the deed transfer. By Thursday, the house was his. By Friday, he had taken out a $275,000 mortgage against it. The money wasn't for my medical bills. It wasn't for savings. It was to pay off a mountain of gambling debts he had been hiding from everyone. He believed the house was his to leverage. He believed he had gotten away with it. He didn't know it was already mine. And he definitely didn't know about the man Eleanor had called Harrington. Forged signatures are only as good as the scrutiny they avoid, and someone was about to scrutinize them very, very closely. I opened my eyes on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the crash. The light was that harsh, sterile blue-white that only exists in hospitals. Too bright. Too clean. I knew that light. I had worked under it for 6 years, but I had never been on this side of it before. My throat was raw from the breathing tube. My ribs ached with every shallow inhale. My left arm was in a cast. Everything felt heavy. Blinking took effort. I remember thinking that I was alive. I remember thinking that was a miracle. I had no idea what had happened while I was unconscious. The first face I saw was Bev's. She was standing by the window, arms crossed, watching my monitors. When she saw my eyes open, she didn't gasp. She calmly pulled up a chair, took my hand, and said, "You're safe. I have to tell you some things, but not now. When you're ready." I could see in her eyes that something terrible had happened. I could see the weight of what she was carrying. I tried to speak. My voice was a cracked whisper. "How long?" 3 weeks. "Surgery went well. You're going to be fine." I closed my eyes again. Not because I was tired. Because I was trying to remember how I had ended up here. I was trying to piece together the fragments. My father walked in at 2:17 p.m. I watched his face carefully. There was a flicker, half a second, before his expression rearranged into one of intense relief. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "Oh, sweetheart, we were so scared. Thank God you're okay." I looked at him. The tears, the trembling lip. I saw it for what it was. "Hi, Dad," I said. That was all I could manage. 2 days later, when I could finally sit up, Bev pulled up a chair. "Your father came once," she said. "That night. He signed a DNR. He told the doctor to let you go. And he claimed you had no healthcare proxy." I counted the beeps on the monitor. 3 beeps. "What did he say exactly?" "He said let her go. We won't pay for the surgery. She's been a financial drain her whole life." I filed an incident report. I stared at the ceiling. I wasn't surprised. That's the worst part. I wasn't surprised at all. I had spent my whole life waiting for him to finally say it out loud. I had spent my whole life knowing, deep down, that this is how he felt about me. "Get me my phone," I said. She handed it to me. I scrolled through the missed calls. I ignored them. I opened my contacts and found a name I hadn't used in months. The name my grandmother had given me. Harrington. The phone rang twice. "This is Robert Harrington," a calm voice answered. "Mr. Harrington, this is Sarah Mitchell. I think my grandmother Eleanor Thomas, Miss Mitchell. I've been trying to reach you for 4 months." He explained. Eleanor had come to him 2 years before she died. She had a will drawn up, private and sealed. The house on Maple Street to Sarah Mitchell solely, a trust account with $82,000 to Sarah Mitchell solely. The deed transfer was legally filed. Your father forged a power of attorney, Harrington said. He transferred the property out of your name 3 weeks ago and took out a $275,000 mortgage. I looked at the IV drip. I want to see how deep this goes. Your grandmother left you a letter, Miss Mitchell. She asked me to deliver it to you in person. Only to you. When can you come? Tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. I hung up. I turned to Bev. What time did he sign the DNR? 11:18 p.m. I wrote that down. The next day, my father visited with yellow roses and a container of banana bread. The doctors say you'll be out in a week, he said, all warmth. We'll take care of everything. Thank you, Dad. My sister Claire stood at the foot of my bed, glued to her phone. We were so worried, she mumbled. My father leaned in. Don't worry about the bills, sweetheart. We'll figure it out as a family. As a family, I repeated the words. He was testing me. I squeezed his hand back. I smiled. They left. I called Harrington. Bring the letter. Harrington arrived at 9 a.m. He was a quiet man in a well-worn suit. He handed me a sealed envelope with Eleanor's handwriting on it. I broke the seal. The letter was brief. Sarah, I know your father will try to take everything. He already has, piece by piece. The house is yours. The money is yours. Don't let him take what's yours. You are stronger than me. I am sorry I didn't say this while I could hold your hand. I cried for the first time since I woke up. It wasn't weakness. It was recognition that she had seen me, truly seen me, and had planned for my survival. Harrington set a thick folder on my blanket. You have everything you need. What do you want to do? I wiped my face. I want to do this publicly. And I want it done before Sunday. What's Sunday? Our church holds its monthly community gathering. My father is a deacon. He never misses it. My father's church, Grace Community, was full of people who knew him as a man of faith and sacrifice. He had shaken every hand in the room for 15 years. He fixed furnaces for free. He led the fundraising campaigns. He was beloved. He was a fraud. On Sunday morning, I arrived with my lawyer. I sat in the back pew. He waved at me from the front, looking proud. I waved back. Patiently, the service ended. We moved to the fellowship hall. My father stood at the microphone, as he always did. He talked about faith. He talked about his near-death experience with his daughter. He claimed he never left my side. I walked toward him. Dad, I said, loud enough for the room to hear. Can I say a few words? He handed me the microphone, confident. Thank you all for your prayers. But I need to correct something my father just said. He was at the hospital once that night. He went to billing first. He asked the surgeon how much it would cost, and then he said, "Let her go. We won't pay. She's been a drain her whole life." He signed a Do Not Resuscitate order. A woman in the front row gasped. A fork clattered to the floor. I am alive because a colleague found my proxy and called my friend in the middle of the night. Not my father, not my sister, a friend. Gerald stepped forward, face pale. You're confused. I have the hospital records, Dad. Then the side door opened. Robert Harrington walked in. Gray suit, leather briefcase. He stood beside me. This is Mr. Harrington. He was my grandmother's attorney. She left me her house and her savings. My father didn't know because she didn't trust him. A murmur rippled through the room. While I was in a coma, I continued. He forged my signature on a power of attorney. He transferred the house to himself and took out a $275,000 mortgage. The silence was suffocating. Gerald looked around for allies. He found none. Pastor David spoke up. I think we should hear her out. Gerald's mask started to crack. I sacrificed everything for this family. You have no idea what I've been through. I know exactly what you've been through, I said. I know about the $275,000 in gambling debt. I know about the forged documents. My sister Claire stood up. Her face was white. Dad, stop talking. She pulled free of his grasp and walked toward me. She whispered, I'm sorry. I should have stopped him. Then she was gone. I turned to my father. A motion has been filed to void the deed transfer. The bank has been notified. The police report has been filed for forgery and fraud. You have to return the money, or you will face criminal charges. You signed a paper to let me die. I'm giving you a chance to make it right. That's more than you gave me. Gerald sat down on a folding table. He put his head in his hands. The deacon, Robert, put a hand on his shoulder. Gerald, I think you should leave. He walked out of that church, and he never stepped foot in it again. Within 24 hours, his world collapsed. The bank froze the mortgage. The deed was voided. He was served with a summons. He was asked to step down as deacon. His clients started to disappear. My father called me that night. You destroyed me, he said. No, Dad, you destroyed yourself. I just stopped covering for you. 1 month later, the deed to Eleanor's house was back in my name. My father pleaded guilty to fraud and was forced to sell his own home to cover his debts. He moved in with his brother. I heard it through the grapevine. Claire and I began to talk again. It's a slow process, but the door isn't locked. She just has to knock. My grandmother's house is mine now. I walk through the front door and I smell lavender. Her photo is on the mantel. I sit in her rocking chair. For the first time, I am in a house that is truly mine, not because I earned approval, but because someone loved me enough to fight for my future. I used to believe being a good daughter meant absorbing every insult. I was wrong. Setting a boundary isn't revenge, it's survival. I don't hate my father. Hating him would mean he still controls me. He doesn't. Not anymore. He is a man who made terrible choices driven by debts he was too proud to admit. It doesn't excuse what he did. If you see yourself in my story, the guilt, the silence, the belief that you owe people who have hurt you, hear this clearly. You don't owe anyone your health. You don't owe anyone your home. You certainly don't owe anyone your life. My grandmother taught me that, with a letter and a house and a lawyer named Harrington. I still go to church, a different church, and I sit in the front row. Not because I need to be seen, but because I'm done hiding in the back. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and make sure to subscribe to Winds of Thought for more stories like this. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to set a boundary that changed your life? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.